Well, hello there, Adam Gower here, and today I am delighted to welcome you to the real estate crowdfunding show, Syndication in the Digital Age at gowercrowd.com, where you are going to hear one of the most successful YouTube entrepreneurs on the planet reveal best practices for how to build and run a 1 million plus following on YouTube. Right? Seriously. My guest, Gary Lipovetsky, runs the million plus YouTube channel for and with his wife, Valeria. I was first introduced to Gary several months ago through the introduction of one of my real estate developer clients. We were planning our video content strategy and wanted to get straight to best practices. Gary provided some fascinating insights and suggestions and graciously agreed to share those again with me today in this podcast so you can also hear how the best of the best video production platforms in the world works and so you can implement these ideas for your own equity syndications. You'll find some short highlight videos of my conversation with Gary on the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com, where you'll also find links to his YouTube channel as well as to a special whiteboard workshop that I've put together for you that shows you exactly how to build your own investor acquisition system so you can raise more money from existing investors and build a list of brand new investors. That's all at the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. Here are just some of the things that you're going to learn in today's episode. Why video is important for real estate developers raising money online. How to take real estate syndication online using video. How to be personable in videos without being personal, and a whole lot more. Be sure to go to the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com to get access to your free whiteboard workshop training so you can learn the exact system that I use for my do-it-for-you clients so you can build your own investor acquisition system to raise capital for your projects. That's all at gowercrowd.com. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the #1 digital marketing video wizard, manager of the YouTube channel Valeria, with over 1 million followers, Gary Lipovetsky. Gary, thanks so much. I really appreciate you joining me today. And I have to say that in preparation for this podcast, I was having a look at Valeria's YouTube channel. Right? Yeah. She has, as you know, obviously, 1 million followers. Right? It's incredible. But what absolutely blew me away was that you put up a video 6 hours ago that has already got 14,000 views. That's unbelievable.
Is that all? That's underperforming. Probably because I'm in it.
You are in it. And I love the way you did the editing as well. You snapped your finger at one point and zoomed in and out. It was very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool editing.
So look, that's what we do.
So let's talk about that kind of production value. But before we do, let's jump in and let me ask you this. So my audience, as you know, are real estate developers who are looking to get online, to raise money online. And the idea, first of all, of having 1 million followers or 14,000 views in 6 hours is anathema, to be quite honest, right? Many aren't on YouTube, don't have a channel. So my first question to you is, why does YouTube matter?
So first of all, Adam, I want to thank you for inviting me on this podcast and for taking the time to do this with me. I think it's great that we can have this conversation and that the people who are going to be consuming this content afterwards really do get the benefit of understanding the benefits of creating content, essentially, and putting it out on various mediums. But back to your question. Your question is, why does YouTube matter? Correct?
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
So, I mean, YouTube is where the attention is right now. So it's not so much that YouTube matters as much as it's that where the audience consumes content matters. So today, I mean, it is YouTube. YouTube is, as you know, owned by Google. They have a lot of expertise. They've had a lot of time to develop the application, to iterate on it and to really perfect it. So I've used multiple platforms in the past, and I can say that at this point YouTube is my favorite. you know, the way that they've created this ecosystem where the creators and the audience and the advertisers are all receiving benefit. It really is a triple win, you know, a triple win scenario. And that's why I'm a big believer in, you know, in the platform. But I think, you know, your question is why YouTube? I think it's more why content, why create content, and then why put that content out. So I think that's a more kind of relevant topic, and, you know, as opposed to the platform itself.
Okay, so let's drill down on that then. So what is it about content that is important, and then why particularly video?
Well, look, the old way of selling, you know, in the traditional way of selling, where you're saying, hey, here's my awesome product. Look at this awesome product. This, I'll give you some context as to what this is. It just happened to be at my desk, and it was the object that I just reached out to. This is a hand exerciser. So I broke my hand back in February, and the doctor told me to buy one of these. Now, if you want to sell this product, you can go and you can take a picture of it and you can put it somewhere, or you can, you know, show somebody in a commercial saying, hey, this is a great product. This is great. You can have strong hands if you use this, and here's why it's a great product. So those days are on the decline. They're dwindling. So what's really important is to create context and to create a story around this product. So rather than selling this product directly, what the most effective thing that you can do is to create a story. And once you've created that story and you've built an affinity from an audience who want to watch your story, who want to consume your story, who want to consume your content, that's when you integrate this piece in. So as an example, and again, this is just random, I just picked this up off my desk, but I know the story behind it. So the story to this piece in particular is I was involved in a car accident, and I was involved in a pretty bad car accident that resulted in me breaking my hand. So, you know, I went through some physiotherapy and just, you know, different kinds of therapy. And the doctor told me I have to get this to strengthen the muscles around the fracture. Now, the story of the car accident, which, you know, leading up to that is, you know, there's a bunch of things that happened in the months previous, in my career, in my life, with my family and whatnot. And this is the kind of context you need to create. And, you know, then I was driving home one night and it was raining and somebody ran a red light in front of me and I got into this accident, and then I went through this therapy. And as I was going to this therapy, I was told that it's really important to strengthen the muscles around the hand. And therefore I found this product online. And now as a storyteller, I can endorse this product. I can say this is the correct product to use because this is the product that actually makes my hand feel better. So you're providing context, you're providing entertainment, and the most important thing is you're providing value. So you're providing value with your content that people want to consume. You're giving it away for free. And then you become an authority in that particular field or in that space. And then once you become an authority, then you won't have to ask people for their business. You won't have to tell people, hey, you know, come and buy my product or my service. Those people will automatically know that you're, number one, you're establishing a brand and trust. And number two, that you're an authority in your space. You're a thought leader in your space. So they'll gravitate towards you. So, I mean, perfect example, you know, you and I have a mutual acquaintance, a mutual friend, and that mutual friend said to you, hey, you know what, we should speak with Gary because Gary understands marketing. He understands, you know, digital marketing. Why did he say that? Because I've established myself as a thought leader because I work in partnership with my wife to create this channel, and we've achieved, you know, this big audience, this huge audience that we have, and we have so many views. So I've become an authority in that space. So our friend, he right away said, okay, you need to speak with Gary when it comes to marketing. And to tie it back in with the real estate professionals that you're talking with, the people who want to raise money, they need to become authority in their space, but they need to tell their personal story. So the human connection needs to be made. And once that human connection is made, and, you know, these real estate professionals become part of, you know, a potential investor's almost like a daily routine of the content they consume because it's interesting, even if it's outside of the context of that particular field, Once you start introducing their knowledge of that particular, investment, if you will, that's when you start seeing good conversion. So that's why it's important. And it's really important that professionals now do take the time and start producing content at scale. It's not enough to put out a YouTube video or an Instagram post every now and then. It's really got to be consistent.
Yes, so that's really interesting. I mean, the idea of telling the story and creating a relationship with the audience is a common theme, right? I hear it all the time. However, how do you suppose somebody, look, when you go to Valeria's site, it's, she's a gorgeous woman, right? And very personable and et cetera, et cetera. And the audience for this podcast are professional real estate developers, right? It's a very different kind of approach. So how does somebody who has never even considered creating a video and talking about themselves in that personal way for the world to see, how do they make the step from in-person meetings to recording a video like we're recording and then putting it up online? I mean, what is the kind of mindset switch, do you think, that has to be thrown to make that work?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first of all, you talked about, Valeria being, a pretty girl, and therefore it's more of a natural fit to be on the internet and make videos. That's not true at all. There are so many different genres of content. There's so many different types of content. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter kind of who the person is who's presenting. You're presenting your knowledge and your experience. So it doesn't really matter. But in terms of making that transition, I think the real estate professional needs to, first of all, get over their fear of what people think of them. I think that's kind of that's step one. Step one is understanding that there's a massive opportunity here. There's a huge opportunity to have an unlimited amount of investors for the rest of your career and never having to solicit anyone again. So once you believe that, once you understand and when you see and you acknowledge the fact that the internet exists at scale now, and that you're not gonna, the traditional way of networking where it's by word of mouth and you make one deal with one person and you fight really hard to network to get that one person, and that one person hopefully tells 3 other people, and then you network really hard to go after them. That's really such an inefficient way to gain your investor base. The more efficient way to do it is to produce content at scale and to release that content onto the world, and then having these platforms with algorithms that will match up what you have to say to the people who are interested in what you have to say. And then once that's done, then it's a matter of building that relationship with that audience and building the scale of that audience. But sorry, what was the question again? Because I think I went off.
Yeah. So actually, every time you talk, I think of at least a dozen questions that I want to ask. So let's just keep moving with these questions that are top of my mind. Otherwise, I'll get completely lost. So you picked up a widget. The best that I can think of picking up is, my sunglasses, whatever, something on my, on my desk, right? That costs a few dollars. All right. But what developers are looking to do is to raise tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars from individual investors. So the way that you communicate in order to build a relationship, in order to promote a product that is a $20, $50 product, is going to be different, isn't it? Than ultimately, saying, hey, Gary, will you invest $100,000 in my deal? How is that relationship going to be different? Do you think?
It's not different. It's just the scale is a little bit different. But listen, you're qualifying people, right? So, you're getting in front of people who are potentially able to make a $50,000 or $100,000 investment. So let's say like myself, for example, like I invest in real estate, I invest in the stock market. And I do that at a relatively, for me, high level of like high frequency, and I do it all the time. And I have an understanding of what I'm looking for in terms of the return that I want. I have an understanding of kind of my my risk tolerance on certain deals, and I'm in different kind of deals, right? So for me, I'm a good example of somebody who would invest, you know, $50,000, $100,000, sometimes more. So for me, if I've been consuming someone's content on somewhat of a regular basis, and that person is branded to me, and I've never met them, but I watch their YouTube videos, or I watch any of their content, or if it's it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be, and I've developed almost like a personal relationship where I'm following their lives, I'm following their professional advice, I'm following their personal advice. It's character development, and I know who they are now. So for me, I would far more likely make an investment into that person, this authority, this person who is branded to me, who I'm invested in emotionally. I'm far more likely to make an investment with this person than I am making an investment with somebody who solicits me and says, "Hey, Gary, invest $100,000 with me. I'm going to get you these, amazing returns, and your money is safe and whatnot." And even if that person was referred to me by a good friend, I would be less likely to convert on that investment than I would be if I'd been already consuming this person's content for 3 months, 6 months, a year. So it's very different. So, at the end of the day, a sale is a sale in the new media age, meaning you tell a story, you build trust, you establish yourself as a thought leader in any given space, and then you convert onto whatever your action is, your target action. So I don't see $100,000 investment any different than me purchasing a $10 item. It may take a little longer for me to consume that person's content, for me to believe that they're trustworthy, than I would need to, somebody who recommends this product, because my risk is somewhat higher on a $100,000 investment than spending $10 on an exercise product. But the process is the same. And that trust, it really does need to be established, because, even with me, people come to me, like, I'm not even on social media. So I have a little bit of a presence, but my wife is really the one, and I appear in her content sometimes. But because people see that, they put two and two together. They understand that my wife and I are business partners, and that we run this business together. So I've already proved out that I'm able to do this. So it's the same thing. If you've got a developer who, let's say, as an example, that developer does a vlog of a tour of a construction site. And prior to going on that construction site, they talk about, how they acquired the property. They talk about the deal itself, and they talk about kind of the drama behind the deal. And they really, they expose that, whatever they're allowed to. Obviously they don't want to break any kind of NDAs or whatnot, but they talk about this deal. It's interesting. It's intriguing. There's a human drama element to it. Then they tour the space itself. They tour this beautiful building that they're developing. They go up, and they see the skyline from the view, and they talk about the building, and they talk about all the different amenities that it'll have. And, they'll talk about all the hardships of building and maybe getting the permits, whatever, like all of the things that are involved in the building of a project like this. For myself, I'm not in that industry, but I may find that interesting. So if that piece of content was engineered correctly, and by engineered, I mean that, like, on YouTube, for example, the thumbnail and the title are really cool. Like, I'm building a $100 million bill or $500 million building. And here's what I wish I would have known prior to starting. And then you have a thumbnail with, like, a skyscraper and a guy standing like this in front of it. So there's some intrigue created, and there's interest, and then I click through and I consume that content. If I watch enough of those videos, if that's a series by a professional developer, and then I either am in the market for an investment, I really want to invest in real estate because I want to diversify my portfolio, or I get solicited by somebody from that person's team, I am far, far more likely to convert in either of those two scenarios than I would be if I had never heard of this person at all.
That's absolutely fascinating. What I'd like to ask you, excuse me, if I may, is about the mechanics of production and of getting stuff out on YouTube. But before I do, there is one struggle that I have in understanding the balance between. And I'd like to ask you about this. So the video that I watched before we went on this podcast was about your personal relationship with your wife, right? About your marriage. That is very, very intimate, personal conversation. So for a real estate developer, what do you think is, and you've actually described some really good content ideas for a real estate developer, right? To talk about the product, to talk about the project and the history behind the project, how he came to the project, et cetera, and the struggles that he had with it, et cetera. But to what extent is the personal side of the individual, do you think, particularly in my field, important to creating the relationship with prospects and with investors that doesn't necessarily directly relate to a deal?
Look, I think, first of all, we control it. So, your statement that the video that my wife and I made, where it's about our relationship, it's very personal, it's very intimate. It's as personal, as intimate as we want it to be. So not only are we creating the content, but we have the ability to edit the content, and we have the right to not even show certain things if we don't like them. So that control is already a big factor. Then it comes down to personal choice. So if you're a developer, so for example, like our children are in the content. That's a choice that we made because we're actually building their personal brands as well. Because I strongly believe that the future of all media lies in, the human being lies in that personal brand. So I'm going to be giving them this asset, and then they can choose to continue with it or not. But as far as the developers are concerned, if I had to guess, I would guess developers are very serious people. They deal with tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And they want to stay credible. So it really is about finding your own balance. So as a real estate developer, you can make the decision to say, I'm not including my family, my wife and my children in this. So you can make that decision. Or if you feel that there's value to them, then you can include them. And that's really up to you. So you do have the ability to decide. Your question is do you have to? You don't have to, because if you feel you can create enough of a human connection without doing that, then by all means do that. You have to come up with content ideas. So you can get as personal as you want. I mean, it could be more of a trade channel where you get into really the mechanics of the deal and the builds. But I'll give you a perfect example. Like there are a lot of renovation channels out there where, let's say it's a married couple, or not even a married couple, just two people. And they have they're renovating a home and they disagree about certain things. So they're constantly having debates about whether this color of brick should be red or it should be brown or whatever it may be. And it creates intrigue. It creates, if there's a banter, it creates engagement. People are interested. So just that video that you saw with me and my wife, it's like we have our banter, but that's real. That's just us. That's actually how we communicate with each other. So with real estate professionals, let's say, for example, there's a developer there are two partners, and those two partners are they're very different. They're just very different in terms of their personalities. And, one is more animated and more of the kind of, of the qualitative guy. The other is more of the quantitative guy. He's more of the numbers cruncher. And you can make content about how they look at deals differently, and then the debates that they have. So that's not personal at all. So, it's just it's varying opinions. I mean, as much as this is a business thing, it's also an art as well. And, you have to create that, you have to create that hook that people want to engage with. But back to your question is, do you have to get personal? You don't have to get personal. And I wouldn't even say that it's a good practice. You may want to, or you may not want to. It's really up to you. It's really about creating as much content as possible and seeing what sticks. Because the really good thing about these platforms, and YouTube in particular, is you can see on a per video basis. You can look into it and you can see what's the click-through rate on these thumbnails as opposed to the other ones that you've made. You can see what the retention numbers are on the video. So as an example, you can see what percentage of the videos they consume. So, if you do one video and it's 10 minutes long and you have a 20% retention rate, that means of all the like 20% of the people watch the entire video, whereas maybe the next video you make on a different topic will have a 60% retention rate. So people are more interested in that. And then you fine tune and iterate. So, I mean, your question is do they have to get personal? They don't have to get personal. They have to try different things that they believe the audiences will be interested in to form a connection and to position them as a thought leader and as someone reputable in the industry. And if one thing doesn't work, you move on to the next, and you just keep iterating as you go.
Right. And you can figure out what works and then just do that same kind of thing again.
The same thing, or you can change it up. I mean, you can make variations of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's, you mentioned a couple things a couple of times. So let's kind of get into the mechanics actually now of what it takes to create video. So before we get into the actual best practices of producing video and the different ways that you can do that, you've mentioned thumbnails and titles a few times. So how important, actually, what are thumbnails for the one guy that doesn't know what those are in my audience? What are thumbnails and how important are they, and how important are the titles to getting somebody to watch a video?
So thumbnails are the images that you see on YouTube. So if you're on your mobile app, let's say I've got my phone here, and let's say you are on YouTube and you're scrolling through YouTube, this image, that's the thumbnail. And then the title is the title right there beneath it. So people typically visually, when they scroll through, they'll see a thumbnail, okay? They'll read the title, and they'll make a decision if they want to click through and watch this content. So that's what a thumbnail is. And when you ask how important it is, it's very important. It's actually one of the most crucial things you'll find on the YouTube platform, like in terms of like what factors into the performance of a video. Because what happens is you can literally have the best piece of content on the planet. You can have a 10-minute video that is just an epic, amazing piece of content that every human being will want to watch. And
how to find the lottery numbers with certainty.
Sure. Yeah. How to guess the lottery and win $300 million. So if you have that video, but your thumbnail and your title, which I just kind of internally for myself, I call it the entry point, because it's how a viewer on YouTube will enter into a piece of content, into a video. That entry point, again, which is a combination of the thumbnail and the headline, if that is not enticing, if that does not create excitement to want to click on it, you can have like an epic video, you can have an epic piece of content that's just incredible, best piece of content in the world, but if no one's going to click on that thumbnail, then they'll never see that piece of content.
So how do you produce best of class? What are best practices for creating thumbnails?
You know what? So the best practices that we use, and there are multiple things. Data analysis is one thing. So we create thumbnails all the time, and we go through these thumbnails and we look at CTR, which is the click-through rate, which is the percentage of people who see it versus the people who click on it, and that comes out as a percentage. So we kind of we find out which thumbnails index higher than others, and we study the elements of the higher CTR thumbnails, and we try to mimic those elements moving forward. So it's an iteration process. But even prior to doing that, before you have this library of content, and if you want to know where to start, a really good way to do it is, let's say you're putting out a video about renovating a $50 million home, as an example, and you want to put that out, and you would then go to YouTube and look up whatever. You would look up keywords saying like expensive property renovations or high net worth renovations or something along those lines. And then you would find the videos and you sort by the videos that perform the best, and you take a look at their thumbnails, and it'll give you an idea, because you know that CTR will likely be higher because that video performed really well on the platform. It got a lot of views. So I would definitely, you can't copy that thumbnail, because then you're asking for trouble. It's just against YouTube policy, so you definitely can't do that. But you can definitely use it for inspiration and understand what it is that triggered the audiences to want to click on that thumbnail. So that's definitely one way you should do it. The other way that we do it internally, and it's like a very old-fashioned thing, is I literally put 10 people in a room to discuss thumbnails. So everybody with a difference of opinion. So I like to put in people who, one of two things, or both. They're either the target demographic of who I'm trying to get into this piece of content, or they work with the target demographic and they understand what the hot buttons are, what the mentality is of that person who we're trying to get to consume that content. So those are the people that I want to speak with. So at this point, I literally put 10 of them in a room and we discuss it and we say, okay, so, this is what the video is about. It's about, let's say, for the example that you gave about that last video of me and my wife, who, at this point, you mentioned it was at 14,000 views, and since we started talking, it's now at 17,000 views.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but I'm always looking at numbers. I'm like a numbers fanatic when it comes to this stuff. Well, as well as the qualitative side of it. But in that particular video, so for example, like I literally sat down with, that was a smaller group. That was like 4 or 5 people. But these are people who are part of the target demographic because I can see the demographic information of the people who view our content. This is my wife's channel. Like it's her personal brand channel. So we see who it is, and then I bring those people into a room. I bring those target demos people into the room.
So these are people that you know, or this is people on your team, or
these are people on our team, and these are people not only on our team, but these are people who I always work with them, and I'm always, I have a relationship with them, and I've trained them to be always honest with me, and I removed my ego from it. So if I think there's a good thumbnail concept, they all know that, hey, they can say, Gary, it's not a good concept. So you have to remove your ego from it when it comes to like creative decisions like this. So anyway, that thumbnail, it was presented to us. So I had the people come up with some ideas, and they brainstormed some ideas, and we discussed it, and we came up with what we thought was the best thumbnail.
And you do that for every video?
Yeah.
Really? And then
not only do we do that, not only do we do that for every video, but once we launch a video and we see that the click-through rate is low, we'll actually go back in a week, recreate the thumbnail based on what we think will work, and then we'll replace it, and then we'll repost. We won't repost the video, but you can promote the video on the community tab on YouTube. So we'll drive some more traffic to it, and then we'll see if it made a change. So we constantly iterate. Now, there's also some tools that you can use to actually load up multiple thumbnail variations in the beginning. You can load up 2 or 3, and then you can run it for a week, and then you'll actually see what's the winning thumbnail. And
really? You can do that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that through third-party applications that are approved by YouTube. And so then you eliminate, let's say, the 2 poor performing ones, and then you stick with the one that works. But thumbnail optimization is and title writing is just a massive part of the process.
That's fascinating. Now, what about the optimal number of posts that you should be uploading each week? How would you relate to that?
So let me address that. There's no number. The number's not relevant. What's relevant is the quality of the content. So it's not a matter of how much you post. I think you should post as much as possible, but you shouldn't post content for the sake of saying, hey, I posted 3 videos this week, or 2 or 5 or 10. You should post good content. You should make as much good content as you can. So once you do that, post as much as possible, because producing content at scale is what's important. That's where you're going to win. So as an example, for Valeria's channel, we post 3 videos a week. We have a client who we're developing their personal brand. Since you and I met, we've been hired, we've been retained by an entrepreneur who wants to build his personal brand. So we're putting 3 videos a week for him up. So I like to start with 3 videos a week, but you know what? They've got to be good. So you can even go to 7 videos a week. You can literally post every single day, but it's got to be good.
What about production of video? So you've got a client that is doing this, has asked you to help them, but presumably they also have to produce video. So what are the kind of the basic ways of producing video, and again, what are best practices for doing that?
So I think one of the best investments developers can make, and anybody for that matter can make, is reallocating marketing budget to human resources, and specifically to a videographer and an editor. And among the two of them, somebody there, and these are just two people. I mean, if you have more of a budget, you can go to three people, and a graphic designer. So, if you can get those three functions, the videography, the graphic design, and the editing, the video editing, those are really the three skill sets you need. And I would try to find, an individual for each of them. The graphic design, from a time consumption perspective, a lot of the times the editors will have, video editors will have graphic design knowledge. So you could use them, but I would definitely hire full-time people and produce this content.
And so as far as the videographer, so the editing and the graphic design, that could be something that is done remotely, actually. But as far as the videography is concerned, that's somebody that has to be there with you in person. So what?
So I would, yeah, I mean.
So what's their job description, actually?
Well, so for example, the entrepreneur who's hired us to do, really, we manage the whole thing end to end. We have our full-time employee is with him pretty much at all times. It's odd hours. So like this particular entrepreneur, he likes to wake up at 3:30 in the morning and go to the gym. He's like, that's how he starts his day. So when it's time for us to, let's say, for example, film like a day in the life of, and it starts at 3:30 a.m., the videographer is at his house at 3:30 a.m. And that day may have been a long day because then he would have gone till 10 p.m. at night because he had like some dinner meetings. And then everything in between. So that's a particularly long day. And then we would balance that off and maybe the next day giving the guy a day off or giving him the afternoon off.
I see.
But videographers in general, it's very odd hours and you just plan it ahead of time. But as far as the job description is concerned, it's things like, first of all, you have to know who to hire. You have to hire the right person. And then you have to manage that person. And you have to form a bond with that person. Like that person is going to be involved in your life. They're going to be around, quite a bit. So certain skills they have to have. You got to see their work, and you've got to, you're rolling the dice like any other hire. You're rolling the dice to a certain degree.
And are they filming everything, Gary, that you're doing? Or
no, they're not filming everything. We're selective. We're selective about what we film. A lot of the times when it comes to like business content, like this person that's retained us to do, to promote his personal brand, to create his personal brand. A lot of the times he'll say, hey, turn off the camera and go. Like it's in a meeting, it's proprietary, it's private. You can't be in this meeting. It's not a reality show. So it's,
right.
A lot of the times it's monologues. A lot of the times it's, a real estate professional will talk about something. So even the same way that I'm sitting in front of my computer now and speaking with you, there could be a camera and I could be talking. There could be potentially multiple cameras set up, maybe two cameras on me, so to get me from different angles. So you do what's called pattern interrupters, where you kind of switch from camera to camera. And if you
that's the click that you did with that edit in that vid. It's really good.
Yeah. And it's just good for attention. It keeps the audience more engaged in the video. And then there's B-roll integration. So there's a lot of different things, but you develop your own kind of cinematic style over time, and you have to really communicate with that videographer.
And what about if you don't have a videographer or a budget to hire a videographer? What would you recommend somebody to get going?
Yeah, you can literally take this phone, put it on video mode, and you can flip it sideways, and that gives you actually like a proper horizontal format for YouTube video. And the sound is great. I do it all the time. And I actually send my clips off to our team here for Valeria's channel, and they integrate it into our vlogs. Listen, there's also some scripting. Like there's also scripting involved. There's planning. It's like any other business. You just have to start. You have to start iterating. You have to start. That's the key. And one of the things that I would highly recommend to the developers, to the professionals that you work with, number one, like don't overthink it. So if you want to put a budget on it, which I highly recommend, and I think if you're already at the level where you're developing buildings and you're looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments, you should probably put a budget on it. Just start. Like don't take 6 months to recruit the perfect hire, to have them trained, to go. Like start
exactly.
Hire quickly. Be mindful about who you hire. Make sure that you guys get along. and then just fire quickly if the person is late, or if the person is like, again, it's just standard HR stuff. But don't overthink it. Just hire those people and get going. If you're hiring internally, and which is fine, you can try doing that. But then you can also go to professional marketers. I'm not pitching myself. I'm just saying that, like,
no, I was hoping you were pitching me, actually.
So you can go to professional marketers who have the production capabilities, who already have the team in place, or who can put the team in place. So there's various ways that you can do it.
All right. So now you've got your videos, and you've done the thumbnail, and you've got a good title, and you've uploaded it to YouTube, and there it is sitting there. So how do you now optimize the video for SEO? And actually, what does that mean? I know what it means, but I don't know as you know.
And of course, SEO is search engine optimization. So you want to make sure that the video is, the video is optimized. So if you're doing if you're making a video about flowers over here, right? I'm just looking at whatever I see on my screen. So if you're doing a video about flowers, you want to make sure that people who are looking for content related to flowers, that there's a high likelihood of them finding your content. And that's from like really standard practices. That's not super difficult. You literally just Google it. You can just Google how to do SEO, and it's just like tagging in keywords and in the description. It's talking in the video, because like YouTube actually transcribes everything. So they'll like, YouTube will listen for it, and then they'll actually create a text version of it, which will be searched. So it's pretty standardized. You just have to Google it, or again, if you're using a marketing firm, then the marketing firm should be able to do it.
I see, but there is an art to optimizing the post itself, right? That goes on YouTube.
I wouldn't call it as much of an art as I would call it like best practices. I just think it's best practices. Look, at the end of the day, from what I'm seeing, because at this point we've made probably, between the channels that I'm involved in, so I'm involved in 3 channels right now. And of the channels that I'm involved in, if I had to guess, I think we're probably at about maybe 2,000 videos. So I put out 2,000 videos in the last 2 years. And, I can tell you that there's certain things that I believe that trigger the algorithm to give you distribution. The foundation, the absolute foundation of it is good content. So you can do all the SEO in the world. You can optimize your thumbnails. You can do all of this. But if your content is crap, you're not going to get viewed, because the algorithm won't determine that, hey, you know what? This is going to provide the best user experience for people who are on YouTube. If they don't feel that there's a good user experience, then they're not going to promote your video. So you have to have good content. You have to work on what I tell people who come to me and say, oh, I want to grow my channel faster. I want to grow my personal brand faster. I want to grow everything faster. And I always tell them that the first optimization that you need to do is this. So you need to optimize the human being who's in front of the camera. Because if you're talking like this and you're all nervous, and if you don't have that ability to build rapport, I mean, the people that you're talking about, they have the ability to solicit and ask for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars from investors. So they're obviously not shy. So, I'll tell you, to give you an example, the gentleman who we're building this personal brand for, he has a 400-person company. He does tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue, great margins, wealthy guy, young guy, very proud of him. We've become good friends. We were friends before. And the first video that we did, I got the raw footage and I looked at it and I called him and I said to him, let me ask you something. Somebody who built a 400-person company and who does tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue, that person, don't you think that person has to have a certain kind of charisma and a certain ability to communicate to be able to accomplish that? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, unless you put that person in front of the camera, then I don't want to take any more videos with you. Right? So stop hiding behind who you think you should be in these videos and be who you are, because who you are is the person who accomplished this. That's the person I want to see. So authenticity and the ability to deliver the message and to deliver your personality, engage the audience, that's the most important. So all of this SEO stuff, that's all great. And we can talk about that all day long. Cool. I mean, it's very textbook. It's very dry. Work on this, work on this, work on being able to communicate with people, work on, if it's, let's say, if you want to be in better shape because you'll feel more confident when you're in front of the camera and you're delivering your message, then go to the gym, get a personal trainer, invest in that too, eat right. So get yourself healthy so that when you're looking at your own footage, you feel good about it. You're not self-conscious, because that self-consciousness, it will come across in your channel. So, fix those things. Like me, I have crooked teeth, so I'm getting my teeth fixed, right? So stuff like that. Work on yourself, and and practice. So that's the best optimization. The best optimization is optimizing the human, because once you're optimized as a human and you're confident in your ability, the algorithm will get the signals from the audience that they like the content, and it'll be pushed out. I just see more and more. I get so many questions, Gary. How do I do this SEO? How do I title and this and optimize? And at the end of the day, you're trying to game the system. You can't game the system. You just got to be the best you. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gary. I tell you something, it is so difficult to do that. Sitting talking to you, I feel like me, right? It's like I can be me. But if you weren't there on the other end of this camera and I was looking into the camera, recording something for people out there, I do exactly like, now, hang on, where's my script? It's like I lose track altogether.
Adam, it's practice, right? It's like anything else. It's like anything else. You can't get good at something if you practice, right? Now, there are certain people they're like idiot savants, right? And
they're natural. Yeah.
Like Mozart, he just sat down and he was able to play.
Right.
I honestly feel my wife is one of these people where she just turned on her phone and made a video and put it up on the internet, and the whole internet fell in love with her. And that's great. But for the rest of us human beings,
right,
practice. So the developers that you're talking about, they have to practice. They're not going to get it right the first time. It would be insane to think that they would.
Right. So it's okay. It's like you're getting back to your point. Before we go to our last three questions, sign-off questions.
Yeah, no worries.
Back to your point that the most important thing is to take the first step, right? And the first step might be go ahead and record a few videos. And if you don't like them, hey, guess what? There's a delete button, right? And until you get the right vibe, with doing it and get used to the mentality, it's okay. You can delete, right? But at least try and get stuff produced and put it out there and see how it works, right?
Absolutely.
Gary, thanks so much. Let me ask you three final questions, if I may. These are quick lightning questions, sign-off questions that I ask all of my guests. First question, what's the most important thing you think somebody starting out raising money online should keep in mind?
They should put themselves in the head of the people who they're trying to solicit from and ask themselves, would they invest in me? If it was me, would I invest in myself if I heard this pitch?
Okay, that's really good. Second question, what's been the hardest lesson you've learned online? The hardest lesson?
The hardest lesson is that algorithms and platforms change. They change constantly. They evolve. And that if you're winning today, it doesn't mean you're going to win tomorrow. You're only good at your last at bat. So you have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to keep learning.
Final question. What are your personal key daily habits that make you successful online?
I'm a bad person to ask because I'm not saying.
No daily habits?
No, I can look. For me, it's I'm very, very content centric. So I'm always trying to understand what makes for good content and what will, what audiences will respond to and what will resonate for people and what moves them and inspires them. So for me, I think that's what makes me successful, is that I really, really concentrate on the things that matter. And that's really the content. And I really surround myself with talented people. I'm mostly I would say, like, if you ask me what I do, we have a small team here. There's only about 16 people, but I have another YouTube channel with 34 people. I surround myself with good people, and I invest into relationships, and I really keep my eye on the content.
Gary, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Adam.
That was the world's top expert in YouTube video production and distribution, Gary Lipovetsky, revealing some of the secrets behind his extraordinary success. Look, creating video is not as difficult as you might imagine, and using some of the ideas and tips you heard today from Gary will put you way ahead of 99% of all developers out there in your syndication efforts online. Remember, you can learn the exact system used by the top real estate crowdfunders or syndicators raising capital online by going to the podcast page at gowercrowd.com and watching the exclusive whiteboard workshop that I've put together there for you. That's where I show you the entire digital marketing system for raising money online and how video fits into that. It's all at gowercrowd.com. Hey, thanks for listening, and thank you, Gary Lipovetsky, manager at Valeria Inc., the Valeria YouTube channel, for spending your time with me today. That's all for this episode. I'll see you next time, and for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.